Welcome to Real Talk. I'm Mikkel. This is Joe, and we have Josh Ott here with us today. He is the lead pastor of Grace Free Church in good old Schuylkill County.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, it's awesome to be here. I love Real Talk.
Yeah, and that's what we do here.
Did
Real
you
Talk.
not intro that yet? I'm just jumping. Did I jump
No,
it?
do it. We're here for
We're
it.
here for a Real Talk. Let's go.
So I don't know how many of you remember, but we created Real Talk platform several years ago because we wanted to create an intentional space to have conversations about topics that we couldn't get to on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
So as we all know, last week our country witnessed the gruesome murder of Charlie Kirk, a guy who was known for his political views, but also his love for Jesus. And his death caused waves across the country, waves of grief and sadness and confusion, anger. And we saw some really beautiful things come out of that, where people came together because of his death, but sadly we're also seeing division as a result of it. So we kind of want to talk about all of those things today, and what better place than Real Talk. So Joe, I kind of want you to just remind us of your original vision of Real Talk, kind of what you hoped these conversations would accomplish. And in that, also acknowledge what we know may or may not happen as a result of people listening to this particular conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's so complex as a pastor and a church is the main Sunday platform that we speak from. Josh and I both speak every week. And that sort of the office or the space on a Sunday morning to proclaim the gospel, to open God's word, to welcome anyone and everyone from our communities, to hear God's word taught, and for Jesus to be lifted high. That space is like super sacred.
Yeah.
It's like and what I find why we develop Real Talk is like wanting to create another channel that there's topics that Christianity impacts directly that we don't have time with a Sunday morning setting, either the time or the ability to get into the dialogue of what's going on and why. And so we created Real Talk so we could have kind of open conversations about things that Christians are thinking about and apply the scriptures to it that may not be the right space to talk about it on Sunday morning because of the sort of sacredness of declaring the gospel of Jesus Christ in that space. I mean, like, you feel that tension, right?
You feel that tension all the time. And there's conversations that are really heavy, like this one. And there's conversations that are really complex, like how people feel about this one. That there is no way you can do justice or capture the right amount of dialogue or truth on a Sunday morning in a service. So there's that protecting a piece, and then there's also like, hey, this is worthy of a real conversation to get really deep into it. And what's interesting to me, because of the topic of this Real Talk, that's kind of how Charlie Kirk, from what I know of him, lived his life, is having real conversations with dialogue that matter. And that's why I think it's so cool that you invited me and we're doing this thing on a Real Talk set.
Super fun. And I think the piece of it that I'll just caveat right to the people out of the gate is nothing that Josh and I or Mikkel were going to talk about today is a try to defend what we did and why we did it, but to explain. It's not, I'm not here to try to convince anyone that I have the right way of doing church and someone else has the wrong way. I can explain the decisions that I make. Josh can explain the decisions that he makes. I'm less inclined to point to another pastor and say, you didn't do it the right way, here's the right way to do it. I'm more like want to have an open conversation about why we make decisions and the importance of Jesus being central on a Sunday morning. Like, that's the central focus of our Sunday gatherings, is Jesus and his word, right? And so that supremacy of Christ being what's most important, and having conversations like this, not to explain or excuse, or to explain, but not excuse. So I know some people that will listen to this, like, it doesn't matter what I say. Like, it doesn't matter what Josh says. There's people on extremes on these topics that they're not actually listening to understand. They're listening to catch, or that's what it feels like, right?
Yeah.
So if that's you, if you're listening to catch me say something, or what's he going to say or not going to say, like, I'm probably going to disappoint you.
Oh yeah, and I don't have a filter, so it's easy to catch me. You know, and like, conversation is a beautiful thing, and this kind of dialogue is what Charlie built his life on, and that's kind of really cool.
Yep.
Yeah. So
that's real talk.
Yeah.
you know, and
he
people are.
encouraged questions. And so
Yeah,
this is a great place
dialogue
to be able to
and
have
people
questions.
disagreeing, and he gave
Yep.
his microphone to people who said crazy things, and he most of the time, you know, handled that really well. From what I know, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but you know, so I think it's really important just to have conversations like this. Maybe now more than ever.
Yep.
So let's start. Here's an easy starter question. I want to hear about your churches. You both pastor churches. What does your congregation look like? What's the makeup of the people that you pastor?
That's a lot of fun. I love my church, and the people are the best part of it. And we have a church in Schuylkill County, and it's a very diverse church. We have a lot of people from a lot of different walks of life coming in, a lot of different church experiences. So we have people coming that literally their first time they have ever stepped into church has been our church. We have people coming back to church who have left from church hurt, who have just kind of fallen out, who maybe never just walked away because they never really felt the meaning in it. We have people that have been following Jesus since Noah sailed the ark, so that's part of the beauty, I think, of my church, which is Grace Free Church. We have 2 campuses. We have one in Orgsburg and one in Tremont. And we say that we're a church that's for Jesus, for Schuylkill County, for your friends and family who don't go to church, and for you. And it's a really good representation of people who have captured that heart for Christ and for our community. And I love them. They're phenomenal people, but very diverse and different opinions on a lot of things. And
I love that you grew up there. Like, this is where you're rooted. It's your home. And for me, I mean, Allentown, Pennsylvania, growing city, 3rd largest city in Pennsylvania. So growing community, pastor a multi-ethnic church, large multi-ethnic church that's trying to love and serve people and rooted in real ways and teach the Bible in ways that people can hear about Jesus, come to know him, de-churched, unchurched. Again, same thing. We have founders that are still a part of our congregation, so people have been following Jesus since Noah sailed.
That's awesome.
Right? And who started this church, but also people that have never heard the name of Jesus and are coming to know Christ, and super fun. Both of us are part of a denomination, the Evangelical Free Church of America. And one of the interesting things about the Evangelical Free Church of America that's maybe a part of this conversation is the ethos of, in essentials, unity, in non-essentials, liberty, and in all things, charity, but also the significance of silence. So part of that ethos is there's times we choose as pastors and leaders to be silent, not because we're afraid, but because we choose unity over speaking and being another voice into the cacophony of noise.
Do you find yourself doing that more the longer you pastor?
The significance of silence?
Yeah.
I mean,
or in certain situations, like, it just seems like you're doing it, like it's triggered a little easier, or it's I don't know what the right word is, a default. I think I do. Do you feel that?
Yeah, I think it's a maturing thing, but also with all the voices, like, it almost feels like as we've gotten older, both of us are about 50 years old. So as we've gotten older, I think maturity keeps us shutting up a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I also think the amount of voices in our society and culture, the significance of silence in the EFCA ethos is not a position of weakness. It's a position of strength to build unity around the things that matter most. And with all the noise in our society, I find it really compelling to take strong positions of silence.
That's not your default rationale? What are you hearing there?
No, I like that. the older I get, the more I hit that. I used to be a guy who, would be much more forthcoming with words spoken. And I've made a lot of mistakes doing that, and mistakes from a position that we hold, verbal mistakes from a position we hold really hurt people. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I lose sleep over conversations I've had that I know I could have handled better, that people have walked away from the church and may have walked away from Jesus because of. Now that's a weight I got to carry.
Yep.
And that's something I'm going to have to answer for.
Yep.
And I lose sleep over that, and that's those conversations, those types of conversations are a regular rhythm of what our jobs entail. And so when I started to realize how much weight my words had, and I started hearing how careless people were with words, and I think we all can agree that there have been some really careless, hurtful, awful things said in the wake of this tragedy.
Yeah.
And I want to use my words in a way that honors God and that keeps the gospel central in a way that helps people and cares for people, all people, and never be a stumbling block for somebody in their journey with Jesus.
And you think about both of us, we're both online.
Yeah.
We both have social media presence.
Yeah, podcast.
All that stuff. So it's like people can rip, like you feel even more. I think every pastor probably since the beginning of the church felt the gravity of I have to stand before my maker and answer for what I say to his sheep. Now with social media and video, anything I say can be ripped out of context.
Oh, all the time.
So it's like you carry an even different level of weight and responsibility to be able to steward that voice to ensure you're representing Jesus well. And for me, like caring for the people, I am not an influencer. I'm not a pundit. I'm not a presence on social media like that. I'm a pastor of real people that I want to follow Jesus, and my voice matters.
Yeah.
And what I say and how I say it. So I don't know, it's kind of cool to think about.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. And just like has happened with Charlie and with, I'm sure, people on the other side of the spectrum, and just like has probably happened to you, and I know it's happened to me, and anybody that has a voice in the public platform, people will snip out clips, misrepresent the whole of what we're saying, and use it as a weapon to hurt us, to hurt other people. And I haven't had my life threatened like somebody like Charlie has had, but I've received threats from things like that. And
we both have. And it's like that's
scary.
the stuff that people don't understand.
Yeah, it's not fun.
So let's go back to last week.
Yeah.
In real time, we're all hearing about what happened to Charlie Kirk. Real time, how are you processing that as a pastor, but also as a person? You guys are real people. So I'm curious, do you process that first as a person and then through a pastor's lens, or does it all blur together at this point in your life? But talk a little bit about what it was like to hear the news.
I mean, for me, I'm the father of 3 young adult men. All 3 of my men were engaged with Charlie's content. 2 of my guys said they were sick to their stomachs when they heard the news and were in tears. My sons are strong, capable leaders. I'm sure there's things they agreed about with Charlie, there's things that they disagreed with him, but it deeply impacted them and their generation and their peers, right? And so that actually, my sons were the ones who told me. And so our family chat blew up because they are engaged with this. I have been aware of Charlie. I've followed his content because I tend to pay attention to rising political figures and trends that are happening. So I've been aware of his content and been probably following him for the last 7 or 8 years, watching Turning Point and stuff that's going on. So my first thought is my sons. My second thought is Charlie is a human first. a husband, a father, a Christ follower. Then he's a national figure that was just assassinated on live camera.
Yeah.
And as soon as you go on to try to find anything out in front of you, over and over and over and over, close up, this angle, that angle, over and over and over again. How, as a human, regardless of what you think or feel, how as a human can you see that and not have your heart broken from one human to another? So third, I start to think, okay, I'm a pastor of a congregation. How does this impact a congregation? But it goes through family first.
Yeah.
I think thinking about him and his family,
Yeah.
and then thinking about my role as a pastor.
Yeah, that's good. So I was at a soccer game that I helped coach. So we were getting ready for a high school soccer game, and all the girls were chattering. It was a weird vibe. I didn't know what was going on. And then one of the other coaches said, "Hey, did you hear?" And I'm like, "Hear what?" I'm typically a low news cycle guy. I'm on social media a lot, but scrolling is not good for my mental well-being. Like I've dealt with anxiety in the past. I try to manage that really well and be a good steward of my own health. And so I'm not really tied in to everything. He said, "Hey, did you hear Charlie Kirk got shot?" And I was like, "Who's Charlie Kirk?" And now that I've seen him and I've learned him, I recognize him from popping up in my feeds. But at the time, I was like, and why are our girls like? It just was so amazing to me that these girls were so concerned. High school girls knew of and were more concerned about somebody like Charlie than I didn't. He just wasn't even really on my radar. And then so I think I started to feel a little heartbreak right then. Like at that point, my prayer was like, "Hey, I hope Charlie makes it," like, because we had not heard at that point that he had passed away. And so, yeah, just heartbreak. And then at some point that evening through the soccer game, we found out that he had passed away. And then I think the overriding feeling was just horror. You see the actual thing. The brutality of it. And it reminded me of there's been so much, that feeling, like when those Minnesota politicians were murdered or assassinated or whatever in Minnesota. And I saw the picture that they had posted of the guy dressed in the police officer with a mask on.
I know.
Like just horror and like evil. And I don't use those words like a lot, like, and then the same feeling I got like when we saw somebody shooting through the stained glass windows of a church at children. Like, it's just that like sickening to my stomach feeling, like what is going on? So just a lot of real disgust and processing it. My kids are younger than Joe's, so I want to know like if they saw that, if they knew, and process it with them. I talked with them a little bit about it, but they were not of the age where they're really tied into that either. So yeah, it was just heartache for his family. Like, and then what was so bad was like it just keeps getting more horrific.
Yeah.
Because then you're like, his kids were there.
Yep. You learn more.
Then you're
See
like,
him more and more as a person.
oh man, and his wife and like and then you're thinking like my oldest is in college at Penn State, and you're thinking all these college students are there, and they're witnessing this horrific thing of war. Like, and I don't want to use that, but like, where else do you see that kind of violence?
Yep.
Unfortunately, it's becoming more common in our culture, but that is the violence.
Then the guy is loose too.
Yeah.
Like they can't find him.
Right.
Right.
even
And
the
so
fear
you're
that
dealing with
instills.
that.
Like, now wait, there's a maniac. There's a sicko maniac running loose who just assassinated
Yep.
this guy in front of
Thousands.
thousands.
Yeah. And anytime you try to think about it, the images come to your mind. And if that's true of us as older people, I'm thinking about students and college students and even younger who are watching this on social media over and over and over. And then the next post with a new angle and the next post.
And
And
it's
then
tough.
update about, and it's just like the exposure and the heightened sense of like brutality and it like blood and just, it's heart-wrenching. It reminds me of 9/11. It reminds me of every time we've gone through culturally these things that just pull everything apart and make you question what evil is taking root in our country. What is going on in our country that's allowing this, it feels like increased, right? Because that happens. The next day is 9/11. The same day, I think, there was a school shooting, but that like got lost in the.
Yeah.
So it's like you're
In Denver, I
bombarded
think.
with kids were shot at school. 9/11 happened. Charlie Kirk was assassinated. What else is happening? And you're watching it. It's real time.
And it does. It feels like the true presence of evil.
Yeah.
Like I don't think you overuse that word at all, which you can't help but feel sick to your stomach.
So there's a part of it that is just infuriating, and there's a part of it that's super traumatic.
Yep.
And, you know, I'm like, I hope my kids don't see that. And I know they do.
Yep.
And like, anybody that's ever been close to death, I think there's a weight that you feel in those type of moments, you know? And so, yeah, it was just really sickening. It was just really a sickening experience, and my heart's breaking for him and for his family, and for his kids who will not have a memory of their father. They're young.
Yeah, but they'll see the rest of their lives if they go on and Google Charlie Kirk, their father. They'll see, they won't be sheltered from this.
Yeah.
This will be in the collective conscience and then the video archive for the rest of time, which is just like.
It's hard to comprehend.
It is.
And it's infuriating. And you want to knock somebody out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like.
But as pastors, like, honestly, are we surprised by this? Because is this not, like, we look at this and we go, how can this be happening? And yet we know what's going on. Like, lie, kill, destroy.
Yeah.
To some degree, we almost shouldn't be surprised by it.
Yes. I
That's the verse that I just can't stop thinking about during this whole thing. Like, the thief has come to steal, kill, and destroy.
So you think about that in all the different layers.
Yeah.
Like how he literally killed someone. Someone was actually killed. And then the deceit and the lying and the manipulation that happens and the portal that opens up for the potential of more death, more deception, more destruction, more division is like embedded into the one act that just layers and layers and layers of more deceit, more destruction, copycats, and like all that. It's just like. And then as a pastor, you're trying to figure out how to help people think through this stuff. Like,
So let's step back from this specific situation. Week to week, sometimes day to day, we are inundated with news, current events, sometimes tragedy, sometimes just complex issues that cause debate. I'm curious, how do you process that day to day, week to week, when you're entering into the average Sunday and trying to figure out how to lead on that Sunday? How do you take what's in the news and decide what actually makes it to Sunday, if anything? I'm curious, do you have a overarching philosophy? Is there a set of principles you live by? What do you do?
That's
with this
interesting.
information?
You want me to go first?
yeah, please.
I don't have an overriding philosophy or system. I don't do it. Because if you did do it, it would be, what would you have on a Sunday?
Yeah.
Literally, it has gotten, and that's why I think, like, from what I have learned of Charlie, he clearly could articulate the gospel. He was a young man at 19 when he started his very public life. And it seems like, from what I've heard from other people, what I've seen and witnessed for myself, he really grew in those 31 years. His tone was way different. by 31 than it was at 19. How he handled some conversations at 31 was way different than how he kind of handled them when he was younger.
Sounds similar to what you're saying about yourselves.
We got to watch his growth, in a public way, and that there's something really cool about that. I think I'm gonna bet on Jesus. I'm gonna bet that if I can help be a part of a space that allows people to come from every different space, hear the gospel, and allow the Holy Spirit to work, that the change that they need in their lives will happen because of what God does in their life, not because I push my opinions or moral ideas or even political ideas on somebody. I'm just like that's where the real growth happens. That's where the real change happens, and that's what I think our country needs. And I know that sounds like a very political thing to say, like this is what our country needs, but it's the light that comes from the move that God does, not the moves that we do. And so my philosophy, I guess, is I just typically never do that. I think there's other platforms for it. I think that's part of what his platform was for, that kind of thing. I think what I want to do is invite people to Jesus and watch the Holy Spirit change them. And if that happens, we have a better world and better families and better churches and a better country. And there's less violence.
Yeah.
And there's less of this crap on social media. And there's more love and hope.
That actually sounds more pastoral than political to me.
That's good.
As a side note. Joe, how do you hear that?
I mean, for us at Faith, we're pretty we believe in processes. We believe the Holy Spirit works through processes and systems. And so we're pretty methodical about planning things out in advance. And when I look back at this past Sunday and see a service that was planned weeks and months before current events and get to witness song selection by worship leaders, text chosen to be preached, that God in his sovereignty has a way of working through processes and systems. It isn't just believe in the Holy Spirit, that means do something different today. And certainly the Spirit can move today, but the Spirit also works in planning and in study and in processes. So this past Sunday's service was planned months beforehand. That doesn't mean that I would never interrupt something. But I do think when things are most heightened in our society, that's the last thing you want to do is change. Right? When something is so fresh and we're still all trying to sort it out, yes, we want to comfort people. Yes, we want to help people. Yes, we want to point people to the hope of Christ every Sunday. But when things are shaking everywhere, changing your programming, so to speak, to accommodate the crazy that's happening inside us, I find actually hurts people more than helps people. So it doesn't mean that we would never. It just means our overarching philosophy, and for us at Faith, we don't mention names from the platform. We don't talk about people in the individual. We've never done that for elections. We very rarely say the names of individuals. And so we talk about the chaos of our world, we talk about the hope of Jesus, we teach the Bible, and we trust the planning process that God's sovereignty. He knows what his children need who walk into Faith Church. And if people walk into Faith Church hungry every week, their Father has something to feed them with. But if people walk into Faith Church or Grace Church, and this happens all the time, where people are looking for, I want that worship leader, or I want that preacher, or they better sing this song, or they better talk about this subject. If people are walking in with that notion, every week they're going to be disappointed. But if every week they come in and go, we're hungry to hear from God and to sing his praises, God has a word to speak to and something to help his sons and daughters.
Let's get back into last Sunday specifically.
Yeah. Okay.
Churches across the country all chose to handle this in different ways.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. What did you land on doing? Did you do anything different? Sounds like it was Baptism Sunday.
So
but talk to me about the process of even getting there.
Yeah.
And how you would handle it.
So Baptism Sunday is an awesome, amazing Sunday where people have decided, some of them spontaneously and some of them have been planning it for a long time, to make a public declaration that they're following Jesus. It's the next step, right? After we profess faith. And it's a big deal. And I'd encourage anybody who's following Jesus, to do it. It's an awesome thing. And so we just had this celebration. It was an amazing Sunday of just celebrating these people, standing with them, encouraging them. Literally one of my favorite Sundays of the year. Now, when you have all this heavy stuff going on, we know that we got other platforms for that. But we also want to shepherd, right? So we also have to shepherd, and part of shepherding is this conversation and allowing people into the process. Part of what we did is we had an email that went out to our church family on Monday that talked about it and processed. I don't think in one conversation, in one email, in one statement, you can ever really do anything justice. But we tried to start a conversation that we hope would be helpful to people through that platform. And so that's kind of how we, and then, knowing that you guys invited us down to have a conversation like this too is a part of it too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, for us, we're just super deliberate. So, from the time that Charlie was assassinated, I'm processing.
Yeah.
I'm thinking. I'm talking. I'm engaged with conversations.
Yeah.
I'm listening. I'm assessing, do we need to make a change? I'm asking that question to people. I'm asking that question to the Lord, right? And it's happening in real time, even up to when services are actually taking place. But we made the decision to stay with our normal way we do things. The text was the text that God planned and I think was very appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
The music selection was very appropriate. I had already scheduled in a new song and talking about how life is really hard. And I got up and did a transition and talked about magnifying Christ, that no small version of Jesus is going to help us get through the events of this past week with all that took place. Because guess what took place that week? There were people that died. There were babies that were born. There were people with cancer diagnoses just in our church family. There were a guy who got assassinated. There was a school shooting. There was 9/11. There's all this crazy stuff. And it's so I got up because it was planned and said, hey, we're going to do this new song about magnifying Christ, that Christ would be large in our hearts and minds. And we prayed for people to repent of sin. And these are the things we did. Could I do things differently? Of course I could, but it wasn't without tons of thought, tons of prayer. And anyone that's been around Faith Church knows this is kind of who we are and what we do. It didn't deviate at all from the last 60 years of ministry. When I've met every lead pastor that has come to Faith Church, this is what Faith Church has done.
Important. That's super important. So we had people come that loved Charlie and followed him, faithfully throughout his career and are very politically minded. We had people show up to church that wanted to space away from all the noise and the trauma that they had been re-experiencing with every video clip that came. We had people in tears that just wanted to worship and just wanted to sing and just wanted to watch people get baptized and didn't want to think about anything else for a small break because their anxiety had driven them to just hyper process all the and that's some very so that video alone will mess with people's mental health. And then we had people that were just, man, I'm getting baptized. And so people from all over carrying all different kinds of things, needing all different kinds of things came. And I think what's so important is for what you're just saying and what we do is they know that's a space. They know what they're getting in your space and in my space. My people know that I don't talk about politics at church. So they know that's a safe space for them just to focus on Jesus, you know? And
Well, it's actually something I want to ask you guys. Like across the nation, we hear of churches were inundated with people and
Yeah.
stories of people coming to church for the first time. What exactly do you think they were looking for?
I mean, it's
You kind of highlighted
yeah,
some of
I
it,
mean,
but that was more, I think, the people, your regular
so
church family.
first, I'm glad they went to church. And I don't care why they went to church.
yes, absolutely.
So you go to church, man. I don't care if it's because your mom made you.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's because you need a nice place to nap.
Yeah, you get a
and
free cup
can't
of coffee.
sleep at home.
Yeah,
Like, I don't
whatever.
care if it's because you got lost or need some
Because
air
why?
conditioning.
Why do we believe
Because we want you to hear about Jesus.
Yeah, and the Word of God, like
It changes people.
The power of God's Word, whatever text is preached.
And when you've been doing this as long as we have stories of people who came to church for terrible reasons, you know, or because for whatever, you know, like, and have found Jesus.
Yeah, and I mean, going back to Baptism
Yeah.
Sunday, I feel like how many stories have we heard from people on Baptism Sunday that they came to church because their girlfriend made them, their mom made them, because whatever.
Yeah.
And how God planted a seed, and now Jesus has changed everything for them.
Absolutely.
So great.
Happens all the time, and it's one of the best parts of our job.
Yep.
Right? We love that part. So I don't care why we don't care why they show up. Just show up. Just go.
And
But
when they come, we know that they're going to get a consistent, like there's a consistency into what we do each
Yeah.
week. So I think people want to bring their friends to that too, right? So it's like people are saying to their friends, if their friends are questioning or wondering what the heck is happening in the world, they can be confident that they can bring their friends to Faith Church or to Grace Church because they know what's going to happen there.
Yeah.
Right? Like maybe they said, well, I'm sure Pastor Joe's going to talk about Charlie Kirk. Well, then they wouldn't really know me if that's true what they said, because it's like they know Pastor Joe is going to talk about Jesus, talk about hope,
Yeah.
talk about truth. Like that's what people know that I'm going to talk about every week.
there's probably people that, and I love that they did this, that came because of Charlie.
Yeah.
Not because of Jesus. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And that's great. I don't care how you get
That's a
here.
good word right there. Yep.
But the reality also is that maybe they came to because of Charlie and also to hear Charlie. And it's not that different. Like, if I am invited to church by a friend who goes to church and I may go to church the next Sunday to see my friend.
Yep.
Like, we do that all the time
okay.
with stuff. That's okay. That's great. But my expectation is usually a little bit different in those kind of situations. So, like, if you were coming to hear Charlie's name on a stage and that was kind of like the expectation you had, yeah, that's not really what church is about, lovingly. And I submit to you with humility and grace that that's not really what Charlie was about either, from what I know of him now. I saw a clip, you know, because we're being inundated with this stuff all the time, and I'm so grateful for that. I saw a clip of him, and some guy asked him, if I have 30 seconds to live, what would you say to me? Mm-hmm. Did you see this clip?
Yeah.
And he just shares the gospel.
Yeah.
That's it.
So like,
No, none of his other stuff, none of the politics. He's like, I just want you to know Jesus. I want you to know that you're a sinner and you need his forgiveness. He offers it to you for free through his grace and what he did on the cross. I'm like, preach, man. Like, so,
I mean, maybe I'll say this and it might open up a can and we might cause a longer conversation, but I think anytime tragedy happens, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, what side of your politics, any kind of tragedy, this tragedy touched a certain demographic. I think what's hard is there's people in our communities that don't realize a guy like Josh didn't even know Charlie Kirk was. Because Charlie was so big in a segment of our population, it feels really bad in that segment. But there's a bunch of other people that don't even know, and they're hearing like this guy got assassinated. Now, as a normal person, anybody that gets assassinated, we should grieve that.
yes.
Doesn't matter where they're from.
Doesn't matter.
There's a loss of life, violence, that's evil, right? But to the segment, when a tragedy happens, to the segment of people that it touched directly, they likely came to church scared. Sad, grieving, and scared, because this tragedy touched something very special to them. So whoever and whatever the kind of demographic that Charlie particularly tapped into, I would submit to you that Charlie tapped into young college students who, for their upbringing, were told they weren't allowed to have opinions about certain difficult topics. That there was one way that school, news, social media was ramming down their throat. And they were told as they were growing up that they weren't allowed to talk about these things. They weren't allowed to express their opinions. They weren't allowed to feel these things, that they had to silence those things by one side of the aisle. They were slam closed. What Charlie awakened, I think, is he awakened in that segment of people that there was a space to talk about both sides. And he gave voice to the other side of the aisle, to a generation who were told, shut up, you can't think that way, you can't feel that way. But they were feeling it, and there wasn't a public place to talk about it. Charlie created the space, agree with him or disagree with him, he created the space for a segment of our population to feel like their voice or their thoughts were allowed to live in the public sector. So when he was assassinated, I think, I could be wrong, I think they came to church, or they came into any space, church, they went to their homes, they went to their friends, sad, shocked, and scared. There's finally someone who gave voice to our feelings, right or wrong. I'm not saying there's feelings are right or wrong. Gave voice to our feelings, and because he was shot, now I'm scared that those feelings and those thoughts and those ideas, that's going away forever. So they come, and then they like expecting this to be talked about at church. And it's like, well, any segment or subset of our population expecting we're going to talk about something at church is probably a miscategorization, because what we're going to talk about at church is Jesus. I don't know. How do you hear that? How do you both all hear that?
I think that's huge. I think that's really interesting to think about. And I hope that somebody steps up and continues to create spaces like that, so that we can have discourse, and so that nobody feels like they can't have a voice. We're all image bearers, you know, and you should be able to talk about what you're thinking.
I mean, isn't this the freedom, the beauty of our country? I think this is what he was tapping into.
Which is a beautiful thing.
It's like everyone should have a voice to be able to share.
I would submit that no matter what side of an aisle you're on, that you should want and appreciate spaces like that, even coming from somebody you disagree with, without the threat or fear of violence. And maybe one of the things that I thought of when you were talking about is like, maybe there's a real fear. So have you felt that? Like, I've gotten threats before. I'm sure you've gotten threats before. Not on the level of, I don't want to pretend like, you know, I've had to deal with stuff like Charlie or these other people that are out in this public square I've had to deal with. But like, there's a fear that probably a lot of people are fearing, like, if I speak what I believe, somebody might try to kill me.
Yeah, I think for sure. I mean, it's interesting because it seems like we all heard about the shooting from young adults. Like, I heard from my son, called us on the way to his soccer game, completely distraught. And I think what you're both tapping into here is they saw themselves in Charlie. Finally, there was someone whose voice was out there, who spoke intelligently, who spoke respectfully, that represented things that they were thinking that they felt like they couldn't say before. Like, he was creating a space to say these things out loud. So I agree. I feel like they saw themselves in them, and then this is what happened to this man because he did all those things. So yes, it like unlocks this fear of, just when I thought it was safe to start speaking freely,
And that makes me want to say something to them. Like, if you saw yourself in Charlie, Charlie found himself in Christ, right? Like, Charlie didn't see himself in himself. You know, his identity was wrapped up in something completely different than just the public part of what you saw in him.
Yeah.
So just when you're saying that, my heart for young people is like, I hope you find the space and the courage, and I'm glad that you had somebody like Charlie to help you do that. But also know that I hope you find what Charlie found, which is an identity that wasn't wrapped in his political standings. It was one that was wrapped in Christ. So.
The piece of it that I think this is important to say, the beauty of the United States of America is that every voice and every creed and every religion and every thought, we're free to share.
Yeah.
Right? And so what's sad to me about Charlie Kirk is that we even got to a point in society where we needed someone to open up a venue for people to actually talk. Like, with all the sophistication and all the ways that we communicate, that people are silenced and canceled. I understand it everywhere else. I don't understand it in the United States of America. The freedom to speak in the academic environment. Where else would you want students to wrestle but in the academic environment? And yet across the country, higher education is shutting down honest debate.
Yeah.
What's going to happen to students when you do that? Right? Every space should be a space where we could share without threat of violence, without threat of being canceled.
Yeah.
Right? For students and kids and adults to be able to talk about whatever they want to talk about without going, I'm going to be canceled, right? Or shot or killed or whatever, right? And it's like, in that space of sharing ideas, the best ideas will emerge for our society.
Yeah.
And ultimately, what we believe, Jesus will emerge as supreme. I don't need things to be silenced for Jesus to remain supreme.
Yeah.
He's supreme. He is Yahweh Almighty, right? So it's like, I think that's what's happening with the generation of the fear that now we're going to be silenced again. And again, there are people watching here that think that Charlie Kirk is an absolute horrible person. We need everyone to feel safe to share.
And we should feel this way about whatever the opposite of Charlie would be.
Yeah.
And that probably is the hard part, until you get to a place where you understand that that all human life has value and dignity and is a gift from our Creator, and that every voice has a right to be heard.
So tell me what your concerns are. Events like this happen. What's your concern for the effect it has on the church?
There's so much here. One of the things that I really appreciate the people that have reached out to us asking questions. I really appreciate our congregation sending emails and DMs and social media and calling. Because if you have a question, you should reach out and ask. We're pastors and people, and like, there's no issue. Have conversations, ask questions, try to understand. I'm not concerned about that at all. That's normal, that's good, that's healthy. I'm super concerned about pastors specifically, and community leaders and pundits going online, starting last probably Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and drawing a line in the sand. I'm very disturbed by a pastor, multiple pastors in our community and online, nationally, who are drawing this line in the sand that says, if your pastor doesn't talk about Charlie Kirk on Sunday, or now in hindsight, if your pastor didn't talk about, you should leave that church, that is completely unbiblical. That's disunifying. It's unbelievable to me that a pastor would say, leave your church if your pastor. Leave your church if your pastor doesn't teach Jesus? Leave your church if your pastor doesn't teach the Bible? Leave your church if your pastor doesn't uphold the standards of 1 Timothy chapter 3 and Titus chapter 1? Those are good reasons. And there's always a place to leave a church. I'm not down with not leaving a church. But in this crazy culture, with all the hype last week, to say to social media, if you guys don't talk about Charlie Kirk tomorrow and your pastor doesn't bring it up, you get out of that church. Because the assumptions behind that, it's mind-boggling to me.
It's a manipulation, and anybody that says anything like that has an agenda behind it, and the agenda is not the Great Commission. It's not the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I know that this may get me in trouble, and I don't really care. I think pastors need to be better. Like, so for instance, somebody would say that and then look at our situation, right? We had an email go out, and not just a normal email, like a very thought through special email to open up conversation. And we had a Sunday based on baptism, like just no understanding of each church's context, no understanding of the dynamics, the family dynamics, the community dynamics that are going on, no idea of what kind of church it is. And my guess is that those kind of statements would be coming from churches that are hyper politicized. And I don't want to judge. I try never to talk poorly of other pastors, because I know how hard this job can be, and I know all the garbage that we have to deal with that people don't understand until they sit in our seat. But yeah, I don't understand it.
I don't understand it, and that's where it's like, that's what's concerning to me, because I'm not here to say, I understand. You and I both have friends, people we love, that talked about this on Sunday. I have no beef with that. Like, I'm not here to say that you shouldn't talk about it.
Yeah.
But to categorically say, without knowing me, without knowing my,
That's wrong for you.
like, it's like,
It's hard not to hear it as anything but divisive.
That's what it feels like. It feels like the purpose and role of a pastor and a shepherd is to, and especially with a heightened sense of fear, and also just like realizing that your voice, it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning, your voice matters. So when people who don't even know you, you're an influencer on social media, they don't even know you, but you're talking about other pastors from your platform and saying to them, if your pastor doesn't talk about this, leave that church. My goodness, children of God, if you haven't left the church before, like if you've been in that church for weeks or months or years and you have no reason to leave your church, now that seed has been planted in your mind because of an algorithm.
Yeah.
An algorithm that doesn't know your pastor but knows you and knows what it needs to feed you. And now you probably have saw that over and over and over again. And it feels like sheep without a shepherd leading them, but you're attaching your mind to someone else. I'm all for people leaving churches. Hear that? I'm like, you don't have to stay in your church. Not at all. I'm not trying to keep people from leaving Faith Church. I am saying, should there be a more robust litmus test for the Church of Jesus Christ than what someone says about a social issue?
Well, because then anybody can hold the church hostage based on a social issue. And I'm old enough to know that a lot of what has, that's been a problem in the history of the church before. People holding the church hostage based on things that are not biblical, nor the church, nor the gospel, nor what we were called to build the church upon. And that's just a scary trajectory.
Yep.
So,
and I think the piece of it that's interesting too, and maybe this is what I see because I got my finger on the pulse of what's happening nationally, it's just kind of a hobby. one of the things that concerns me about that, when we get back to the question of why that concerns me, is I think there's an assumption when someone says, if your pastor doesn't talk about this, you should leave the church. I think the underlying assumption behind a lot of that is your pastor is afraid to talk about it. Or
No, and I've seen multiple.
they're capitulating to a
on
certain audience.
Social media that they're saying exactly that.
Yeah.
Is that
it is
you're living in
easier
fear.
to just talk about whatever you want to talk about as a pastor.
Yep.
It takes strength to say, how am I going to shepherd everybody, sanitize this of my own emotions and my own feelings so that I can focus people on Jesus.
Yeah.
That is the harder path than just spurting out whatever Josh Ott wants to say on a Sunday morning based off of whatever I felt during the week, based off of whatever event happened.
Yep.
Like, that is such weak sauce, man.
Well, and I
It's
know,
a joke.
I'm pretty sure that there probably are some leaders, pastors, who are afraid of these topics, and because they're trying to engage a different population, they're afraid to talk about certain things, and they're being politically correct. I'm sure that's out there. I can only speak for myself. That had nothing to do with my decision about Sunday. It was nothing to do with fear. I'm not afraid to talk about anything. Anybody that listens to me, I talk about everything and anything. I hold very, very sacredly the calling of being a pastor and wanting to shepherd everyone that walks in those doors. I hold that very, very tightly. And I didn't not say it because I wasn't afraid. I was trying to listen to the Lord and be sensitive to the congregation, knowing I have other channels like this called Real Talk, which is why we have these spaces. So that, but I go back to, my goodness, if you judge a pastor by one Sunday.
I will not pander as a pastor to anybody. I'm not pandering to the left so that truth gets watered down and people feel better. I'm certainly not going to pander to the opposite side, applying the same kind of pressure that they don't want me to pander to on the other side. Like, right? Like, I wonder how often people would really look at Jesus and find him in the uncomfortable middle.
I mean,
and I say this to our campus pastor, Ryan, and I have had these conversations a lot because, you know, there are times where if you land with Jesus, you will have everybody mad at you.
Yes, everyone's pissed.
The left will be mad, the right will be mad because you are standing with Jesus and you are not pandering to one side or the other. And to have some, and I hadn't seen those videos, which is probably why I'm a little excited right now, but to have some pastor or whatever, I understand it if it's somebody immature in their faith saying something like that online. I get that. I understand that. But a pastor who should know better to call me weak because I didn't use the platform the exact same way they used the platform,
I mean, let me take it a step further.
it's hysterical to me.
It's like,
and I would love to have a conversation with them.
Yes.
A real conversation, not one over social media or with cameras.
Well, and to be honest, how easy would it have been to just drop Charlie Kirk's
Super
name and
easy.
his family in a prayer real quickly?
So easy.
That could have been the easy thing. So that's why, earlier when I'm asking you, like, do you have tucked away in the back of your head, whether it's conscious or subconscious sometimes, a principle, a philosophy of what makes it to Sunday worship service?
I mean,
Because
yes, of course, but it's all
otherwise
like,
you are trapped into the, well, what do I do what do I say that's gonna get me in trouble or not say that's gonna get me in trouble? Like, it becomes crippling.
Absolutely. And that's the problem. And we're being inundated, everyone, not all of America, all Western culture, inundated with voices telling us how to think and feel. So one of the things that's super sad to me, go back to concerns. I am very concerned. Again, there are pastors saying and political leaders saying, if you don't, leading up to Sunday, and if you didn't after Sunday, there are pastors that are creating lists of churches that did and lists of churches that didn't so that they can help people find a new church. That's very concerning. on the other side of that, I'm very concerned because as pastors, we all lived through 2020. Was hell.
Yeah. And did we learn
And
anything?
a national leader said, you messed up, pastor, in 2020, and you didn't get it right in 2020. This is your last chance
To redeem
Are you serious?
yourself?
to redeem yourself. And the amount of views
Who was
he
that
got,
person?
it's like, my goodness. So here's what I'm concerned. I guarantee you this Sunday, there were pastors who felt pressure
Oh, absolutely.
from their elder boards, from their staff, from members of their congregation that might not have said anything, but they knew that if they didn't, they would get canceled. They knew they would have, so they didn't even do it with the right heart. So the filter ultimately, and this is like almost impossible to try to explain to people, it's like we answer to God.
Yeah.
And an elder board, like both of us have accountability. It isn't like thus saith the Lord, like, but it is like wrestling with the Lord, talking to the Lord, listening to the Lord, and talking to my elders and my staff about what I should do. And then trusting the Lord with that, not listening to someone on a social media rant saying, if you don't, because I guarantee you, Josh, you and I both know there's pastors that were like, I can't get this wrong again.
I have to say something.
I got to do something. It's like, that's not the way to lead.
I'm so glad I didn't know all of this stuff was going on. Like, because my infuriation my anger level would have been what I needed to wrestle with.
And I want to restate, I have no beef with a pastor talking about this.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying
So
that what we did was
I
right.
listened to a beautiful sermon from a good friend who, in his context, that is exactly what they needed to say. They were close to 9/11. They're in that town. It was the moment he had to step in and shepherd in this way.
Yes.
And it was a beautiful sermon. I loved it. I learned from it. It was
Absolutely.
amazing.
But I'm not going to say to any pastor, the only litmus test to me, just my thoughts, the only litmus test to me on whether you should leave your church or not is the Bible being taught weekly? Is Jesus being lifted up? Is your shepherd actually caring for you? And are you being cared for and discipled? And your kids being discipled? And if you've been discipled and cared for weeks and months and years before this moment, but your pastor didn't say, Charlie Kirk, I'm not sure that's the best reason to leave a church.
So I want to try this because I think this might be helpful. And I'm going to encourage you guys. I'm going to ask you these questions rapid fire. I'm going to encourage you to answer succinctly.
Succinctly at the same time?
Nope. You each get your turn.
You got to edit that. I don't know what succinctly means.
But I'm curious. I think this probably helps sum up a lot of what you're talking about. But I really want to encourage you, if you can answer like in one sentence.
Yeah.
So what's the purpose? We'll go Josh Joe.
Oh, man, I got to go first.
Yeah, you do. What's the purpose of Sunday morning worship?
Succinctly, fast. So to see Jesus and fall in love with him.
To worship Jesus.
What's the role?
I like his answer better than mine.
I get more time. I'm slower.
What's the role of the church?
You're like, I'll fix Josh's answer. That's why you're going second.
What's the role of the church?
What's the role of the church? To expand the kingdom of God.
It's the gathering of God's people to be salt and light in the world.
It's good.
What's the responsibility of the church?
To be salt and light.
Yeah, to expand the kingdom, one person at a time.
Is there a difference in those two questions, role and responsibility?
I think so. I think because the church, like, I'm so glad, we talk about this all the time at Faith. I know you guys talk about this all the time. It's like, I'm so glad there's people that are coming into our gatherings that are curious, that are admiring Jesus, but they haven't yet followed him. But the purpose of the gathering is for the believers in Jesus Christ who already know King Jesus, and now they're growing to worship him and obey him in every aspect of their lives. The others are watching and being a part of it, but to actually be the church, it is the believers. And so it is our role to help believers worship and take on their role of expanding the kingdom one person at a time to fulfill the Great Commission.
Okay.
What Joe said.
what's the role or responsibility, I'll let you take that either way, of the pastor to the church?
I mean, it's to be the under shepherd. Like I'm not a politician. I'm not an influencer. I'm not a communicator. I'm a pastor, which is feed, protect, care for my sheep, the people in my congregation. I'm protective and care for and know and try to learn and love and serve my people, which are different than your people.
Yeah. I would say to lead and shepherd, but not to lead in a generic sense of the word, to lead people towards Christ, towards being more like Christ, and then the shepherding part Joe covered pretty well.
So, good job on being fairly succinct, guys. In light of all those answers, I'll ask again, would you, looking back at last Sunday, would you have done anything differently?
Me? Absolutely not.
Joe?
I think I would. Yeah, I think I could have done a better job of recognizing the grief that people were feeling and the fear that were people feeling in our specific congregation and address that directly. I wouldn't have changed the worship set. I wouldn't have changed the sermon. There's a handful of words that if I could do it again, I would be like, you know what, I could have been more sensitive to the grief and the fear of people. So whether I said the name Charlie Kirk or not, I have no regrets. I don't think I did anything wrong. It's just, okay, if I had a do-over, I'd be like, I could have maybe sensed people's fear and cared for them in a better way. I mean, I saw one of the responses of one of my African-American friends and how he led his congregation through this in an African-American culture where this was a very different situation. And when we were talking and hearing how he handled his congregation, he said very little, but he prayed for Charlie and his family and the people heard. I think I could have done that. In our context, that would have been important. So here's the thing. It's like, I don't get do-overs, but I'm always learning and growing, and I'm not going to get it right all the time.
I love that. And I say absolutely not, but I feel like the platforms that we used, whether small groups or email in our context, were the right platforms for a baptism Sunday.
Yep.
I feel like if it would not have been baptism Sunday and it would have been another Sunday, we would have probably handled it differently.
Yep.
Now, I don't want to pretend like I know how we would have handled it differently, because we would have, like you guys, we put a lot of thought into these kind of things. So it would have been a different conversation, and I don't know exactly what we would have done, but due to the context of what we have going on, which I think is an important point to make, right? Like, people that are making blanket statements don't understand the individual context of what is happening in individual churches. So, man, it was such an awesome celebration. And I think anybody in heaven, whether Charlie Kirk or any of the saints that have gone, the people that are gone before us, would have been celebrating that service. And so that's what I mean. I say that bluntly, absolutely not. But, in the context of what we have on a Sunday, on that Sunday specifically, it was amazing. Now, I know we're thinking through and talking through what this next Sunday is going to look like, because we're back to our regular kind of routine, which is also interesting. Where's the understanding of patience and timing and platforms and how you have these kind of things?
Because I don't know.
We want to hit the button right away and be like, cancel or wrong or, we want to hit that button. And it's like, wait a minute. So,
I mean, there's an aspect too, Josh and Mikkel, we could get into this. It's just a whole other piece. There's a whole cultural thing happening around this. This man hasn't even been buried yet.
Everything is very fresh.
It's so fresh. It's like there's people grieving his kid. There's lots of time to talk about what all of this means, and lots of ways to harvest learning. And that we could, in these settings
And there's
in other
lots.
settings. But
And it's a
but
broader-
grief is like there's a segment of our population that's grieving. Sadly, there's a segment that's rejoicing. How, as a pastor, do we step back from that and go, what's most important in this moment? And that's where I look at myself and I go, I could have been more comforting if I'd like to be more comforting, but actually having commentary of what's actually happening socially and why this is happening because of Charlie Kirk when the man hasn't even been buried yet feels like disrespectful to me. And I'm a shepherd. I'm not a political commentator. I'm not a social commentator. I care about people.
Yeah, we don't follow a platform or a pundit or a voice other than Jesus. And that is super important in a time in our world where all these other voices are so loud and we're so inundated with messaging through our phones. It's time to hyper focus on what it means and what it looks like to follow Jesus above all else and let the other voices inform and be part of our journey and part of our growth and learning and processing, but ultimately to focus on Jesus. And I think that's what Charlie believed too.
Yep.
In all of our grieving and confusion and anger and fear, what can we learn from this? Especially as the body of Christ, what can we learn from this?
The conversations are important. There's so much we can learn from it. That courage is important.
Courage, you mean?
I mean, being willing to do uncomfortable things based on the gospel. And I think that's an example. I look at Charlie, and I don't know all that he believed politically. I have seen what we've seen recently, and I've heard him share the gospel. I have to believe that, like, what I see there is courage to live publicly sharing the gospel. And that is not maybe how we all would apply that to our own walks, but how can I courageously stand on Jesus and with Jesus in whatever situation I have at work or without fear of pandering to one side or the other. And I think so that's one of the lessons that I think I'm learning in the middle of all this. I think maybe we could learn from how important it is to tone down all of the rhetoric that we throw around so easily, to understand that everything we say comes from our heart, and what we say and how we say it reveal about where our hearts are at, and how do we take better care of those and pay attention to the most important part of us, which is our soul. So I think those are some of the lessons that I think I'm looking at this going like, wow, like maybe it's good time for me to go, man, Josh, how is that all lining up? And how you've said and what you say, what's that reveal about your heart? And when I think of disciple, right, like I think of Philippians 1:6, like he who began a good work in you will complete it. And it's a process of learning and growing and failing. And, when I think about that in this context, I think about how you got to watch a young man from 19 to 31 on social media and how his demeanor changed along that journey and how his approach softened in some ways. And I think that's a picture of discipleship. And when you look at me and you see me make mistakes and get mad at preachers and do all these other things,
Call people out.
yeah, then you see a picture of discipleship. Sometimes it's messy, but ultimately, as believers and followers of Jesus, we trust that he's doing something in us to move us along. Any moment where things get heightened or our worldview gets set ajar a little bit, or there's a tragedy or we hear something that upsets us, any moment where something different kind of like sparks in us, it's a good moment to go, what's going on in my heart?
Yeah.
And am I willing to follow Jesus, even if that means I got to say sorry or have an uncomfortable conversation or do things differently?
Yeah, I didn't understand. I
Yeah.
don't understand. Help me understand.
Right.
And learn. I love that, Josh.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I think about the sacredness of the time we gather as his believers once a week. It's like with 24-hour news and all kinds of busyness and craziness, like I love being with our church family. It is special. And regardless of what was done or not done this Sunday in churches around the world, there's something so mysteriously wonderful and beautiful about gathering side by side and singing God's praises together and learning from his word together, and how wonderful that is and how he meets with us in this sacred space, right? That's unlike anything else that's happening. And so I look forward to Sundays. I can't wait to see our family on Sunday. I can't wait to praise. I can't wait to learn. I can't wait to pray together. It is wonderful and mysterious, and let's guard it and protect it for what it's for. And let's have conversations and small groups and real talks and ask questions and learn from each other and give each other the benefit of the doubt and see that your pastors are just humans too, who are just trying to balance everything too, and who are going to have good moments and bad moments, and we're just
learning.
just learning too. And so it's like, I'm learning that people are being discipled by something or someone all the time. It's what makes the Sunday experience so sacred. Is like in our context, I have 35 minutes a week to talk to my family, and I have
so
intentional because my family has thousands of minutes and hours, feels like, of hearing other things.
So much.
So it's just like, it's special and wonderful, and I love the family of God, and I don't want to be a part of the noise crapping on other people. I want to be a part of the solution, not the problem.
Yeah, it's good.
Thanks for being candid today, guys, and sharing your heart.
Yeah.
You've heard a lot today, lots to unpack, lots to process. The comment section is a great place for you guys to engage with others. But if you have questions about anything you heard today, if you're struggling to process everything that's happened in the last week, we really encourage you to reach out to us directly. You can email us at questions@faithchurchpa.com. We would love to engage with you. Thanks for watching.